Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. How are you today? Fine. Okay, today inshallah we're going to continue our talking about supply or demand, supply and market equilibrium. In the last class, we discussed the concept of demand, the concept of supply, and derived the demand curve, and as well as we have discussed the determinants of demand and supply. The last point of supply, which is the distinguish between the change in quantity supplied and a change in supply. Once we finish this point, we will go to the market equilibrium and the magnitude of the change in demand and supply, as well as the government intervention in the market by setting and imposing a price, setting a price floor. So let's start with the distinguish between the change in supply and the change in the quantity supplied. So a change in quantity supplied versus a change in supply. We have two cases or two figures or graphs. The first one is related to a change in the quantity supplied, and the second one is the change in supply. The first one is the change in supply or quantity supplied. QS means quantity supplied. Number two is the change in supply. As you know that supply curve has an upward sloping, which illustrates the positive relationship between the prices and the quantity supplied. So this is the supply curve, point A, point B, and this is the prices, a quantity supplied. Supply has an upward sloping, illustrates the positive relationship between the prices P1 and the quantity supplied. When the price increased, the quantity supplied increased as well. So QS1, QS2. A change in supply is a movement from point A to point B along the same supply curve, or a movement from B to A along the prices of the same group, right? But the change in supply is a full shifting of supply curve, whether to the left or to the right, as a result of the change in the one or more determinants of supply, like the change in the new technology, or the change in the cost of production. What else? The number of sellers, or the taxes or subsidies. All these policies or these determinants affect supply curve to shift to the left or to the right. So in this case, it's called the change in supply, right? Okay, let's go to the market equilibrium. The market equilibrium. As you know, that the demand curve has a downward sloping. QD. This is the demand curve. It has a downward sloping. Supply curve has an upward sloping SP QS. Now, let's put these two graphs or diagrams in a one diagram, we will reach to the market equilibrium. If we put these two curves in a one diagram, we will reach to the market equilibrium. The market equilibrium is the condition where the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied at a particular price level, right? So, as you see, this point is called the equilibrium point. At this point, we have the price P star. It's called the equilibrium price, and we have a Q star. It's called the equilibrium quantity, right? At this point, a quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. So as you see, the equilibrium is the condition where demand intersects supply, or demand curve intersects supply curve. At this point, we have the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantities. At this point, a QD, demanded, equals quantity supplied, right? Okay. Now, let's suppose that the price or the market price is above the equilibrium price. If the price is at P2, yes.
Surplus supply,
yes.
demand.
Surplus supply and shortage demand. Why? At this point, or at this price, as you see, there is this point is a point along the supply curve. So it illustrates the quantity supplied. This is the quantity supplied, QS. At this point, illustrates the quantity demanded. So as you see, if the price is above the equilibrium price, or the market price is above the equilibrium price, in this case, the quantity supplied is larger or higher than the quantity demanded. So, if P is above the equilibrium price, in this case, the quantity supplied is larger than the quantity demanded, as you see. QS is larger than QD. So we have what? A surplus supply, or excess supply of goods, or shortage demand. So we have a surplus supply of goods. So here we have a surplus supply, or supply surplus. If we have an excess supply of goods, or a supply surplus, in this case we have an overproduction of goods and services, right? So the seller will try to sell his product, or to market his product. So he will accept to reduce the prices in order to market the overproduction of his product. So if the quantity supplied is larger than the quantity demanded, there is a tendency for prices to what? To decline. Yes. If the price is larger than the equilibrium, or higher than the or above the equilibrium price, there is a tendency for prices to decline, because when we have if the seller has an overproduction, he will try to market his product, to sell his product, so he will accept to reduce the prices or to decline the prices in order to meet the willingness of consumers to buy the overproduction, right? And vice versa. If the price is, or the market price is below the equilibrium. If the market price is below the equilibrium, as you see, this is the demand curve, supply curve, and this is the equilibrium. A, P star, Q, equilibrium quantities. Our assumption is, if the market price is below the equilibrium price, in this case, this point is along the demand curve, so it illustrates the quantity demanded, right? So QD, and at this point, QS. So as you see, the quantity demanded is larger than the quantity supplied. The quantity supplied is less than the quantity demanded. So here we have what?
Total supply.
Yes. Yes. So in this case, quantity supplied is lower than quantity demanded. So we have a shortage supply. Shortage supply. If we have a shortage supply, the consumer in this case has a willingness to purchase, to buy the product, whether he can, in this case, he can pay more than the market price. So the prices would what? Would increase. So if the equilibrium price, if the market price is below the equilibrium price, there is a tendency for prices to increase in order to restore the equilibrium, or until the equilibrium is restored. In this case, we have a shortage supply illustrated by this triangle. A shortage supply. So let's come back to this point and another one. In this diagram or graph, if the price or the market price is above the equilibrium price, the quantity supplied is larger than the quantity demanded. So we have an excess supply of goods, or a surplus supply, or supply surplus, illustrated by this triangle. A, QS, QD. Right? And in this case, there is a tendency for prices to decrease to restore the equilibrium until the equilibrium is restored at P star. For the second case, if the market price is below the equilibrium, in this case, the quantity demanded is larger than the quantity supplied, or the quantity supplied is less than the quantity demanded. So here we have a shortage supply. A shortage supply because our surplus demand or excess demand. Shortage supply means excess demand of goods. So there is a tendency for prices to what? To increase, to reach or to restore the origin equilibrium. Right? Okay, let's take a mathematical example in order to understand the idea related to the market equilibrium and the supply surplus or shortage. يلا بالشباب. Suppose that we have the following informational data about the gasoline market and the gas strip. Point. Prices, demanded, quantity supplied and surplus or shortage supply. Point. Prices of gasoline in shekel, the quantity demanded of gasoline, quantity supplied, supply surplus or shortage. Ten, 15, 20, 25, 30, 30, 40. 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. The prices, sir, point, yes. These are the prices. Point A, B, C, D, E, F, G. The prices are 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. The quantity demanded of gasoline is 200, 180, 160, 140, 120, 180. The quantity supplied of gasoline is 80, 100, 120, 140, 160, 180, and 200. Now, we are going to calculate if there is a surplus supply or supply surplus or shortage in the market. To calculate if there is a supply surplus or surplus supply or shortage, the formula is QS minus QD. So QS minus QD, quantity supplied minus quantity demanded. In the first case, at point A, quantity supplied 80 minus 200 minus 120. 100 minus 180 minus 80 minus 40, 0, and 40, 80, 120. As you know, that if the quantity supplied is larger or higher than the quantity demanded, in this case we have what? A surplus supply. And it would be illustrated after this point. At point E, we have what? QS is larger than QD. So here we have a surplus supply or supply surplus. At point E, F, G, we have a supply surplus. At point A, B, C, we have a shortage supply because the quantity supplied is lower than the quantity demanded. So here we have a supply shortage or a shortage supply. At point D, it's the equilibrium point. Thank you. That's the equilibrium point, where the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied at a particular price level. Let's go to the diagram. The prices the quantities. Now, let's explain the relationship between the prices and the quantity demanded and derive the demand curve firstly. So, the prices are 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. The quantities 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140, 160, 180, 200. Let's derive the demand curve. At point A, the price is 10 and the quantity demanded is 200. At 10, 200. This is point A. At point B, 15, 180. This is point B. C, 20 and 160. At point D, 140 and 25. At point E, 120 and 30. C, D, E, F, G. That's it. Let's connect these points together to reach the demand curve. This is the demand curve. Now, let's derive the supply curve. Supply curve illustrates the relationship between the prices and the quantity supplied, or the positive relationship between the prices and quantity supplied. The first point, point A, the price is 10 and the quantity supplied is 80. 10 with another color. 10 and 80. This is the first point, point A. At point B, 15 and 100. 15 and 100. 120, 140 and 25, 160 and how much? 30, 180 and 35, and the last point, 240. So let's connect these points together to reach supply curve. So as you see, we have derived demand and supply curve in a one diagram. Where is the equilibrium point? Yes, point D. At point D, the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied at 140. Or the demand curve intersects supply curve. Right? At this point, the equilibrium price is 25 and the quantity, the equilibrium quantities in the market is 140. Right? In this case, there is no shortage supply or surplus supply. So, if the price is 35, what is the situation? QS, QD. Yes, who can give us the? Yes. What's the situation? Supply surplus by Gadesh.
By 180.
Minus 100. Yes. No, it's a positive 80. Yes, it's a positive. So at the price of 35, at the price 35. Quantity supplied equals 180 and the quantity demanded equals 100. So to determine whether we have a shortage supply or a supply surplus, QS minus QD equals 180 minus 100 equals 80. It's a positive. So here we have a surplus supply by 80 liters of gasoline. It's a supply surplus. If there is a supply surplus, there is a tendency for prices to what? Yes, to decline. To decline. To restore the equilibrium. Right? So, if the price is 35, there is an excess supply or supply surplus by 80 liters of gasoline. In this case, the prices tend to decline until the equilibrium is restored, or until the price of 25. Yes, in order to market the overproduction of goods and services. Right? Okay. If the price is 10, as you see, if the price of gasoline is 10 per liter, we have what? The quantity demanded is 200. The quantity supplied is 80. So here we have a shortage supply by Gaddesh. Yes.
Minus 80 minus 200.
Excellent. 80 minus 200. So we have minus 120. So as you see, if the price equals 10, a quantity supplied equals 80, and the quantity demanded equals 200. So to determine whether we have a shortage or supply surplus, QS minus QD, 80 minus 200 equals minus 120. So here we have a shortage supply of gasoline in the market. And in this case, there is a tendency for prices to Gaddesh, increased by Gaddesh. Yes, to restore the equilibrium price. Right? Okay? Is there a problem so far? Who has a problem? No. Okay. Let's go to another topic, which is the government intervention in the market, or how can the government monitor the market or the prices in the market? Yes, by setting a price floor. It's the direct intervention of the government. So, the second topic in this class is the government intervention in the market. The government intervention in the market. Government intervention and the market in markets. The government intervened in the market by two approaches. Number one, it's called the direct intervention. Direct intervention. And the second one is indirect intervention. For the direct intervention, the government can control the prices by imposing a price ceiling and a price floor to protect the consumers or the producers. So we have two policies: the price ceiling and the price floor. Price and price floor. The indirect intervention to control the prices are taxes and subsidies. Yes, taxes and subsidies. If the government wants to increase the prices in the market, it should increase the taxes. If it wants to decrease the prices, it should provide subsidies for producers in order to encourage them to produce, and their prices then would decline. Right? But now let's discuss the price, or the idea of price ceiling and price floor policies for the government. Okay? Price ceiling. Let's start with the price ceiling. And in order to understand the idea of price ceiling, let us take or discuss the following example. Price ceiling. To understand the concept of price ceiling and the idea, how does it work? Let us suppose that the price of packet of flour in the Palestinian market and the Gaza Strip market equals 300 shekels. This is the demand curve, supply curve. This is E, the original equilibrium point. P, prices of the flour. Flour means a tahina. Prices of a flour. Price ceiling. And this is the quantity of the flours. And our assumption is, suppose that the prices of flour in the local market or in the Gaza Strip market equals 300 shekels per packet. And the quantity purchased per family is 2 packets a month. Packet. So, if the price of flour is 300 shekels, the quantity demanded or purchased by the families or per family is 2 packets a month. And as you know that when the price of flour is 300 shekel, it's too expensive. So, in this case, the government intervened in the market by imposing a price ceiling. A price ceiling to protect the consumers. It would be below the equilibrium price. It's called the price ceiling. Suppose that the government decided to set a price ceiling of 160 shekels or 120 shekels per packet of flour. So, in this case, it has many effects. Yes. A shortage supply and surplus demand or excess demand. If the prices of flour declined from 300 shekels to 120 shekels per packet, the quantity demanded would increase to, suppose, 5 packets per family, and this is the quantity demanded, and the quantity supplied has declined to the average 1 packet per family, because the reduction in the prices would encourage the consumers or the buyers to purchase more, and discourage the sellers or the producers to produce more. Right? So in this case we have excess demand or a shortage supply. A shortage supply or excess demand, because the quantity demanded has declined to 5 and the quantity supplied has declined, increased. The first one, the quantity demanded has increased, quantity supplied has declined, so a QD or QS is less than the quantity demanded. So here we have a shortage supply, right? How could the government deal, or what are the consequences and effects of the price ceiling? Before that, this point, let's ask a question. When the government sets a price ceiling below the equilibrium, is it effective? Why? It's below the equilibrium, and in this case, the main goal of the government is to protect the consumer. So the government has succeeded to protect the consumer, so it would be effective price ceiling, right? So if or when a price ceiling is below the equilibrium, it would be effective. So what is the effective price ceiling? It's the maximum price that the producer or seller can charge for his product, or may charge for his product. The effective price ceiling is the maximum price that the seller may charge for the product. It's reasonable for the producer or the seller to sell his product with a lower price, but it's forbidden to sell his product above this price, right? So the price ceiling is the maximum price that the seller may charge for his product, right? Okay. What are the consequences and effects of the price ceiling policy? Yes.
The first effect that people have to wait in queuing to get the product and not willing to get it.
Yes, thank you.
Second one
Yes, let's discuss these points one by one. Right? Number one, your classmate said that one of the consequences and effects of the price ceiling policy is queuing. Queuing means طوابير. The people will wait for queues to get the product, and the people who wait for a long time can get the product. Right? So the first impact or effect of the price ceiling is, or effects of price ceiling policy. Number one is the queuing. So the queuing is that the people will wait for queues in order to get the product, and the people who waits for a long time or wait for a long time can get the product. Otherwise, they can't. Number two, yes. The black market. The black market means that the seller can or will it try to sell his product with above the price ceiling. By sometimes maybe he decides to sell his product with a price of 200 shekels. But it's called the underground economy. It's a part of the underground economy. Okay? So the black market means that the product or the producer or the seller will sell his product over the price ceiling. But if the government knows about this issue, they can arrest him. Right? Or they can punish him. Okay? But number three.
Can we say monopoly?
Sorry? Monopoly, it's something else. It's another issue. It would be discussed later by the, I think in chapter 6. We are going to discuss it deeply about the monopoly market and the monopolistic policies and procedures and how the, yes.
In the black market we have two sides. The fixed price ceiling.
Yes.
The seller can hide the product and sold it for
His relatives, yes.
his relatives
And friends, yes.
who are willing to buy more to get the product, or producer can reduce the quality. That means black market.
Yes.
To make more profit.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes. He has explained an important issue, which is in the black market, the producer or the seller can sell his product for his relatives, his friends, and he may be reduce the quality of the product. Yes. What else? Type. Yes. Reduction of the quantity supplied. Yes. As you see, the quantity supplied has declined. Yes.
The government encouraging more.
No, now we are going to discuss the solutions, yes. And how can the government deal with the impact or the negative effects of the price ceiling policy? Yes. Now, as you see, that we have negative effects for the price ceiling policy. Let's discuss how can the government deal with the negative effects of the price ceiling policy. Yes, who can give us the solution for the negative effects of the price ceiling policy? Yes. Negative impacts of the price ceiling policy. As you see, in the price ceiling policy, we have a shortage supply of goods and services. So, how can the major question is, how can the government deal with such situation? Yes. Yes, this is number one. Or encourage the local production of goods and services. Number one. So let's discuss how can the government deal with or deals with the negative impacts or effects of price ceiling. Number one, as you see, the price ceiling is a shortage supply. So how could we meet the excess demand of goods or the shortage supply? Number one, the government should stimulate or encourage the local production. Number one, encouraging the local production of goods by maybe reducing the taxes or providing subsidies for the producers to produce more or to encourage them to produce more and more. Number two, encouraging importing of goods. Sorry? Support for the consumers, yes. Or supporting the consumers. Okay. Let's go to the another side or the another pulse. Yes. No, producers, sorry. The producers. Because now we are going to encourage them to produce more, so we have to support the producers. Yes, thank you. Yes.
When the government encourages importing, how the government deals with this negative impact?
Yes. In general, when we study the international trade, we are talking about exporting and importing. In general, importing is a bad issue for the economy, or it has a negative impact on the economy. But as you see, we have a shortage supply of goods. So how could the government deal with such problem? It's a big problem because it leads to increasing maybe the prices and get a high inflation. So how could the government deal with such issue? So it has to encourage the local production and encouraging the importing, but for the short run, not for the long run. Okay? In order to solve this problem. But in the long run, encouraging importing for a long period creates negative impacts on the economy as a whole. Right? Okay. Let's go to the price floor. The price floor. Which means الأرضية السارية. To understand the idea of price floor, let us suppose that the price per packs of tomato in the Gaza Strip equals 2 shekels. D S E. This is the price of tomato. This is the quantity of tomatoes. The price per packs of tomato equals only 2 shekels. 2 shekels per packs of tomato. It's too cheap. And the quantity demanded and supplied, or the equilibrium quantity in this case is, suppose it was 9 packs per family a month. So if the price is so low or too low, the quantity demanded is 9 packs, so it's too large. In this case, as you see, if the price is 2 shekels, the farmers will face lot or a big loss, right? So to protect the farmers or the producers, in this case, the government should intervene by imposing or setting a price floor which is above the equilibrium. It's called the price floor. Suppose it was 6 shekels per pax. It would be effective price floor. Why? Because the main goal of the government is to protect whom? To protect the producers. So, to protect the producers, they imposed or sets a price ceiling above the equilibrium, which is 6 shekels per pax. In this case, the consumer will feel that the price of their product or the product is or has become what? Expensive or more expensive. So they decided to decrease the quantity demanded. And when the producers or the farmers feel that the price has become larger, they decided to increase the quantity supplied, right? So it has become more profitable for the producers or the farmers to produce more and more. So the quantity supplied, as you see, has increased to, suppose, to 13 boxes. And the quantity demanded, this is the quantity supplied, quantity demanded has declined to 5. Okay. So as you see, it's effective price floor. If the price floor is above the equilibrium price, it's called the effective price floor. So if the price floor is above the equilibrium price, it would be effective price floor. Okay, but if the price floor is below the equilibrium, it would be ineffective price floor, right? So if the price floor is below the equilibrium, it would be ineffective price floor, right? So if the government or when the government sets a price floor, in this case, the quantity supplied has declined and quantity demanded has declined. So we have what? Supply surplus. We have, or there is, a supply surplus. Surplus. By 13 minus 5. Or, yes, 13. We have supply surplus by 13 minus 5 equals 8 boxes of tomato, right? Okay. What are the impacts or the effects of price ceiling? Sorry, price floor. No, my question is, what are the consequences or effects or impacts of the price floor on the... No, the question is, what are the effects? شو الأثر تبع the price floor على السوق? We have a surplus supply, that's it. تمام? How could the government deal with such situation? Yes. Encouraging the exporting of goods, because as you see, we have an overproduction of goods. In this case, QS is larger than QD, so we have a surplus supply. So the government should stimulate or encourage the exporting of goods and services. What else? Yes.
government support to producers such as subsidies
In order to what?
in order to encourage
To encourage the consumers to purchase the products. Yes, Muhammad.
Imposing customs on import.
Excellent, excellent. As you see, or as you know that sometimes the imports goods from outside the Gaza Strip. So, in this case, the government should increase the customs taxes or the custom taxes on the product or the substitute products that comes or from outside the Gaza Strip. So it would reduce the importing of goods and services. Yes.
Should the government buy the surplus in the market?
Yes, purchasing. The government in this case can purchase the overproduction or the extra production of the goods or tomatoes from the market. What else? We can use the overproduction of tomatoes in other industries, like producing ketchup or something else. Right? Okay, we have another example related to the price of floor, which is the minimum wage or the minimum wage policy. It's related to the daily life, our daily life. Who listened to the news within the last 2 weeks? For the Israeli economy. Let's go to the minimum wage and discuss this issue. The minimum wage. The minimum wage policy is similar to, or it's an example of the price floor. This is the labor demand and this is the labor supply. This is the wage. Wage is the price of labor or worker. And this is the quantity of labor. This is equilibrium wage or equilibrium point in the labor market. This is the equilibrium wage, W star, and this is the quantity of labor. Equilibrium, a quantity of labor. Yes.
The government imposed the price floor to protect the labor from
Excellent,
competition.
excellent. The minimum wage, the idea of minimum wage is to protect the workers or the labor by setting a minimum wage above the equilibrium. Yes, it's called the price floor. In this case, the quantity of labor supply would increase and the quantity of labor demanded would decline. The same idea, the same concept of the price floor policy. To W1 or W2, QLS would increase and the quantity of labor demanded would decline. So here we have unemployment or a surplus supply of workers or labor. We have a surplus supply of workers or labor, which is a Q, yes, it's called the unemployment rate. QLS minus QLD, quantity of labor supplied minus the quantity of labor demand. And we have an example for this idea. 2 weeks ago, the Israeli government, represented by the Minister of Finance, Yuval Chesant, his name is the finance minister of Israel, signed an agreement with Hestedrut in order to increase the minimum wage in Israel to be 4,300 shekels for the regular workers. Yes, monthly. It's the minimum wage in Israel. The minimum wage was, or the previous minimum wage was 4,100 shekels. They decided The agreement between the Minister of Finance and the Histadrut, which is the labor union in Israel, they agreed upon increasing the minimum wage to be 4,300 shekels a month. This policy will lead to increasing the quantity supplied or labor supplied and decreasing quantity of labor demanded in Israel. So I expect that the unemployment would increase with a smaller amount, right? In Palestine, 1 week ago, the West Bank government decided to set or to impose a minimum wage with amount of 1,450 shekels for the regular workers. Right? Okay. These are two examples related to the price floor. Okay, let's go to another topic, which is the magnitude or the relative magnitude of a change in demand and supply. The relative magnitude of a change in demand and supply. Magnitude of a change in demand and supply. We have more than 15 cases. I will analyze maybe 5, and I will give you the chance to work with me to analyze the left cases. Number 1. As you see, this is the demand one, supply one. This is the original equilibrium point, A1, Q1, Q1. If the demand increased, there is a rightward shifting of demand curve to D2. What is the effect of a change in demand on the market price and the quantities, or the equilibrium prices and quantities? Yes.
Prices and going to be in the equilibrium point.
Yes. So, as you see, we have the second equilibrium point at which the price is increased from P1 to P2, and the quantities Q has increased from Q1 to Q2. So this is E2. So the final effect would be increasing the prices plus increasing the quantities, increasing the equilibrium price and increasing the equilibrium quantities, and vice versa for sure when the demand declines. The second case, with the demand decline, this is D1, S1, E1, P1, Q1. Our assumption is there is a declining or decreasing in demand. The decreasing in demand, we have a lift, or there is a leftward shifting of demand curve from D1 to D2. So we have a new equilibrium point, E2. We have a decreasing in the prices from P1 to P2 and decreasing the quantities from quantity 1 to quantity 2. So the final effect is decreasing the prices plus decreasing any quantities. The third case. When supply, this is D1, S1, E1, P1, Q1. Suppose that the supply has increased. As a result, maybe we have a new technology. Yes.
Price decrease.
We have a rightward shifting of supply curve from S1 to S2. This leads to a new equilibrium point, E2. In this case, the prices decline from P1 to P2, and the quantity has increased from to Q2. So, the increasing in supply leads to a rightward shifting of supply curve. The prices decline and the quantities increase. So, we have a reduction in prices plus increasing the quantities. Right? The opposite case, when supply decline, D1, S1, P1, Q1, E1. Our assumption is there is a decreasing in supply. We have a leftward shifting of supply curve, so the prices would increase to B2 and declining and the quantity or equilibrium quantities. So in this case, the result would be increasing the prices and decreasing quantities, increasing the prices plus decreasing the quantities. Now let's suppose that we have a change in or changes in demand and supply. I will do the first case and will give you the chance to do the second analysis. So we have a change in demand and supply. The first case, if demand increased and supply increased. Number one, we have increasing in demand plus increasing in supply. For this case, we have three sub-cases. Yes. The first one, if the increasing demand is higher than the increasing in supply. The second is when the demand increasing, we have increasing in demand which is less than the increasing in supply, and the last one is, the change are equal. Yes, the changes are equal. So let's do the first exam or the first case. D1, S1, and this is the origin equilibrium point, E1, P1, Q1. As you see, we have increasing in demand and increasing in supply, but the magnitude of a change in demand is larger than the magnitude of a change in supply. Right? So we have increasing in demand with a larger than increasing in supply. So this is D2. An increasing in demand means a rightward shifting of demand curve. We have also an increasing in supply with a smaller amount to S2. We have a new equilibrium point, between the green lines. S2 and D2. This is E2. We have increasing the prices to P2 and increasing the quantity to Q2. P2, P has increased plus increasing the Q. Who can do the second analysis? Yes. When the increasing in demand is less than, yes, lower than the increasing in supply. استنى الخط معلش. اكتب الكيس شوية بعدين. تعال هنا عشان تبين بس. So B as increasing demand is lower than increasing supply. This is D1, S1, yes, prices, quantities.
Okay, here we have increasing in demand but lower than increasing in supply.
Excellent, yes.
Starting with demand a little.
Yes.
Right, projecting.
Yes.
And supply is larger than demand.
Yes.
Right, projecting. So we have here a new equilibrium point.
Yes. What is the original equilibrium point? You have to determine the original point and then you have to go to the second one. Yes, this is P1, P2, or Q1. Yes, Q1. Yes.
And here P2.
Yes.
Q2.
Yes. So
we
what
have
is...
price,
Yes.
price move from price P1 to P2.
Yes, decreasing the prices and...
We have increasing in
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Yes. So the last result or the final result would be decreasing the prices and increasing quantity or the equilibrium quantity. Who can do? Yes, Muhammad. Thank you very much indeed. What is the case?
Increasing in demand.
تمام تمام, go ahead. Yes. One, yes. One. Yes, all of these points are one. Okay. Equals. Thank you. Yes. Yes, with the same amount. Yes. So the final result would be what? Yes. The price is excellent. Yes, thank you. So as you see, the increasing and demand equals the increasing in supply. In this case, the magnitude of a change in demand equals the magnitude of a change in supply. So the price would not change and the quantity would increase. Right? Who can do another analysis? Yes. Now, let's analyze the second case, which is increasing in demand and decreasing in supply. Increasing in demand plus decreasing in supply. We have three cases. The case number 1F, the demand increase with a larger than the reduction in supply. So, go ahead. So the first case, when the increasing demand is larger than the decreasing in supply, as you see.
Demand would increase,
Yes?
price was shifting,
Excellent. Yes.
larger than decreasing.
Excellent.
supply, shift was shifting,
Yes.
equilibrium.
E1, E2, S1, S2.
Price will increase.
Yes, and the quantities.
Would increase.
So as you see, when the demand, increasing in demand is larger than the decreasing in supply, the final result would be increasing in prices and increasing the quantity demanded. Yes. خلاص المحاضرة الجاية تحضروا حالكم إن شاء الله نستكمل